Good morning, West in the world. Welcome to your review video for Thursday, October the 10th, following our lecture this morning on the era of the French Revolution. Our starting point this morning was a moment of review, to look back and realize that the events that we described in the 16th century are finally coming to their full and revolutionary fruition here in the late 18th century. We talked about how the Enlightenment is a byproduct of patterns that had been set in motion by the Renaissance, by the Age of Exploration, by the Reformation, and by the Scientific Revolution. Events of a much earlier time, 100 and 200 years prior to the flowering of the Enlightenment and the outbreak of the French Revolution, but that in their shared humanism especially, they set the stage for what is to come. We talked also about the American Revolution as one of the sort of early byproducts of this new way of thinking. We talked about how the American Revolution expresses or gives concrete reality to the ideas of the Enlightenment, to people like John Locke and the Baron de Montesquieu, whose ideas of the separation of powers are so closely reflected, so carefully built into the American Constitution. The American experiment is significant not so much because America itself is a great power, it is clearly not at this time, but because it is a model of a government built on the concept of liberty and the concept of rights, ideas that are at the heart, but purely at the theoretical heart, of the Enlightenment. Now they've been made real. And for the French, the Americans' closest allies in their war for independence, this is going to be incredibly significant. Once, of course, it combines with general French unhappiness about their own situation, their own condition living under the absolute Bourbon monarch Louis XVI. It takes a financial crisis created by the bad harvests of the preceding years, by years of lavish spending by the Bourbon monarchy, for change to arrive in France. But when it does in 1789, it is dramatic. Of course, it starts relatively slowly, with the constitutional transformations ignited by the summoning of the Estates General. Had it been left in the hands of the National Assembly, perhaps France's revolution might have looked more like England's Glorious Revolution. A dramatic, diplomatic change only. Instead, of course, the revolution is going to be swept up in mass movements, driven by peasant women and urban dwellers who stormed the Bastille in 1789. The climax of the revolution, in terms of its violence and its radical phases, comes in the year 1793, when the attempted flight of the king opens the door for the radical revolution, the Committee of Public Safety, and the rule of Maximilien Robespierre. The goal, of course, is to create a pure republic dedicated to government by reason. But in reality, what Robespierre and his colleagues produce is a reign of terror. The violence, the messiness of the radical revolutionary phases at the end of 1793 and the beginning of 1794 leads in turn to Robespierre's own death, and a momentary pause in the upheaval of the French Revolution. Next time we get together, we'll talk a little bit about what happens next in the revolution, why it fails in the short term to attain its goals, and yet why we can safely say that it is the most significant political event to happen in modern European history. See you next Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend.